everyone has arrived. Looks like it's about time. Looks like everyone who's here is going to be here. You guys can step closer if you want. I'm not going to bite, I promise. Even though muskrats might, I'm not going to. So to start off with today, I know there's some little kids around, but I would encourage you to close your eyes for me. We're going to start off with a little story, just so you can really get immersed with the program, and we're going to start off with a traditional Ojibwa story, all right? So close your eyes. So long, long ago, brother turned against brother, and soon the Anishinaabe were killing one another over meaningless disagreements. Seeing that harmony, brotherhood, sisterhood, and respect for all living things no longer prevailed, the Great Mystery decided to purify the earth. This water came in the form of a great flood, wiping out all of the people and most of the animals. Only Nanabahozo survived the flood, resting on a log, along with a few other animals and birds who managed to swim and fly. Nana floated on this huge log, searching for land, but found nothing but water, as far as the eye could see. Nana spoke. "I am going to do something," he said. "I am going to swim to the bottom of this water and grab a handful of earth. And with this small bit of earth, I believe that I can create a new land for us to live on." So, Nana did just that. He dove into the water with a splash and was gone for a very, very long time. Finally, he surfaced, short of breath, and told the animals that the water was far too deep for him to swim to the bottom. All were silent. They had almost given up hope, but then the loon spoke up. "I can dive under the water for a long time. This is how I catch my food. I am sure I can make it to the bottom, and I will return with some earth in my beak." With a flap of his wings, the loon disappeared and was gone for a very long time. Surely, thought the others, the loon must have drowned. When they saw him float to the surface, nearly weak and unconscious, he stammered, "I couldn't make it. There must be no bottom to this water." Many more animals tried and failed, including the mink and even the turtle. All had failed, and it seemed as there was no way to get the much-needed earth from the bottom. Then, a soft, muffled voice was heard. "I can do it," it spoke softly. At first, no one could see who it was that spoke up. Then, the little muskrat stepped forward. I'll try," it repeated. Some of the other, bigger, more powerful animals laughed at Muskrat. Nana spoke up. "You cannot be the one to place judgment on others. If Muskrat wants to try, he should be allowed to do so." And so, Muskrat dove into the water. He was gone for much longer than any of the other animals who tried to reach the bottom. After a while, Nana and the other animals were sure that the muskrat had given his life trying to reach the bottom. But far below the water surface, in the grasses and the snails, the muskrat did reach the bottom. He was very weak from the lack of air, and he grabbed a little tiny bit in his paw, and he began swimming for the surface with all of the energy his little tail could muster. One of the animals had spotted Muskrat as he floated near the surface. Muskrat reached into the water and pulled him up onto the log. A song of mourning and praise was heard all across the water as the muskrat spirit had passed on to the spirit world. Nana had exclaimed, "Look, there's something in his paw!" Nana carefully reached down and unfurled each finger at a time. The animals gathered close to see what was held so tightly in his little paw. Muskrat's paw opened to reveal a small bit of earth, and all of the animals shouted with joy, "The earth can begin anew!" So you can open your eyes now. My name is Carter. I'm a senior wildlife ecology student, and I'm minoring in environmental education. I'm super excited to be able to give this program to you guys, and I'm so glad that many of you could show up. So, after today, you should be able to explain some of the ways that our superhero friends, our mighty muskrat, can help the ecosystem and keep the waterways of Schmeeckle Reserve happy and healthy. We are going to be walking about half a mile or so towards the boardwalks. So if you have any issues with that or anything, talking privately before we get started. So with a show of hands, can you all show me who has seen a muskrat before? Yeah? All right. Okay, so would you guys like to share where you saw your muskrat friends? Let's start over here. Where did you see your muskrat?
Iverson Park.
Iverson? All right. Over here, have you seen a muskrat?
In
No?
In a pond by my parents' house.
All right. What about over here? Where did you see your muskrat?
A rock quarry.
A rock quarry. So they're kind of everywhere. What about Schmeeckle? For those who didn't share, have you ever seen a muskrat in Schmeeckle? No? So these little buggers are really good at hiding. Schmeeckle is an excellent place for the habitat. Is an excellent habitat for muskrats to live and make their home. There's plenty of food, water. There's a lake here. They've got protection. They can make their houses here. So why don't we see them very often? To get started, we're gonna talk about why maybe they are so secretive. The muskrats are really small, right? For those of you who have seen them, they're only about 2 to 5 pounds, so they're really little. I'll show you a picture here of what they look like, for those who need a refresher. See how cute they are, how little tiny they are, their little paws. Here she's chewing on her favorite food. This is a cattail right here. And you may have seen them like this. Sometimes they don't sit still for very long, so you may have seen them like this, swimming through the water. And right before they disappear, you might get a small glimpse of them like this, right before they go into the water. Right. So because these muskrats are so small, a lot of things probably want to eat them. They're that cute. I probably imagine they would taste probably pretty good. So I want us to brainstorm some ideas of what might want to eat a muskrat. Okay? Sure. What do you have? You got an answer?
Foxes.
Foxes. Yes, that's a really good answer. So muskrats like to eat things on the land too. Not everything that they eat grows in the water. Sometimes cattails grow on land. So if they're munching away and a fox spots them, they're going to try and eat them. So they got to be really careful. There's a few other ones. Can we think of things maybe in the sky that wants to eat them? Birds, eagles, yes, exactly. So muskrats like to swim in that water, the first picture right here. And if an eagle is sitting on these perfect trees that are overlooking the water, and they get the chance, they're gonna dive down and they're gonna try and eat that muskrat. They gotta be really careful there. So there's two more types of animals that might eat a muskrat. Can we think of what those are?
Snakes.
Snakes! Yes! So muskrats are really small, right? They're only 2 to 4 pounds. That's like the size of a chihuahua. So when they're born, they're even smaller. And they like to come out right away, and they'll be swimming in the water too. So if a snake is swimming on top of the water and they run into a baby muskrat, that's gonna be super easy for them to eat. What about in the water? Can you think of anything that wants to eat them in the water? A muskie.
A muskie.
Yeah, these are huge fish. They're large, predatory fish. And if you got a teenage muskrat, maybe even a big muskrat, there's like muskies that can get like 6 feet long, right? Or something like that. Something crazy. So the muskrat has to be really cautious about where they go and what they do and where they go about their business. How many of you have confused a muskrat for a beaver? That does happen sometimes. I know I have. Muskrats are really small, like I said, but beavers are a little bit bigger. A lot bigger. They can be like 50 pounds. But if they only have their little head showing, it can be easy to mistake them sometimes. And a lot of the times when you think of an ecosystem engineer, you think of a beaver, right? They're the ones chopping down trees. They're the ones who are munching on other plants, and they're dragging them, making their dams, and they're creating these ponds for other animals to live in. But sometimes the muskrat is overlooked because they're just as important ecosystem engineers. And this spotlight is on the beaver, right? Everyone thinks of beavers as ecosystem engineers, and a lot of times people think of muskrats as pests, or they don't really think of them because they don't get to see them very often. So this beaver is in the spotlight, and the muskrat could have very easily been like, what? I do just as much work as them. Why am I not getting any credit, right? So, this is like the tried and true origin villain story, right? Villain origin story. Like, they could have became evil, tried to wreck the beaver's life, but they didn't. They took it with strides and bounds, and they were able to still be a superhero and let them have the spotlight. But they're kind of invisible at the same time, because they are letting the beaver have the spotlight, and they're just in the background. Alright, so we talked about our first superpower, and that's them being really cautious, right? And then being really invisible about where they go about their business, so they can survive. So on a count of 3, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, and we're gonna shout invisibility. All right? Okay. So get ready. Use your super voice. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Invisibility. Okay. Well, try better next time. That was all right. I expect more next time. So while we walk to our next site, I want you to brainstorm. You can brainstorm as a family, some of your groups, and we're going to think of what your favorite superpower is, or you think would be a really cool superpower. All right? Follow me. So gather a little closer, you guys, if you're comfortable with that. All right. Okay. So before we get started and share some of our answers, I just wanted to take you to this place right here. Because in the summertime, this is a really excellent place, even though it's covered in snow and ice right now. This is a really good place for muskrats to hang out. It's full of plants, it's got really shallow water that they like, and this is just a really good place to maybe come back here and explore in the summertime and see if you can check out a muskrat, okay? Okay, who wants to share their superpower that they would choose?
Time travel.
Time travel? What would you?
Super speed.
Super speed? What about you?
Turning into different animals.
Talking to different animals?
Turning into.
Oh, turning into different animals. That's super cool. I never even thought about that.
I would be a shapeshifter.
A shapeshifter? That's cool. What about over here? Some adults want to share anything?
X-ray vision.
X-ray vision? Super cool. Does anyone else want to share? I think mine would probably be, I think it'd be cool to like speak any different language. That would be pretty cool. Or when I was a little kid, I wanted to be invisible so that way I could like sneak out of my parents' house when they were like yelling at me and stuff. I always wish that I could have done that. So next we're going to talk about the next superpower that our super muskrat friends have. And muskrats don't actually become invisible, right? So where do they go if they don't actually become invisible?
Underwater.
Underwater, exactly. That's exactly what they do. So what we're gonna do a little demonstration, and we're all gonna be able to do it, okay? So on the count of 3, we're all gonna hold our breath, and we're gonna compare it to our muskrat friends, all right? So on the count of 3, I'm just gonna say hold your breath, and we're gonna try and hold our breath for as long as we can, okay? And then we're gonna compare, all right? So 3, 2, 1. Okay, I can't hold my breath any longer. Some of you are, but I don't know about you, but I'm not as good as our muskrat friends. Well, muskrats can hold their breath for up to 17 minutes when they're underwater. And we talked about them maybe evading some of their predators for why they would want to go underwater. But think about the first part of the story. What else did muskrats do when they were underwater in order to hold their breath? What did he grab at the bottom of the water? Yeah, he swam all the way down to the bottom to grab the earth to be able to make the earth new again. And what muskrats do is they like to eat. They like to eat the roots and shoots of some of the underwater plants that are around here. All of the plants that grow along here, they go underwater and they dig those up. That's their favorite part. So in order to do that, you know, have you ever dug up a plant or a weed or something like that in your vegetable garden? It's kind of hard to uproot a plant, or maybe you think of like a dandelion or a pepper plant. It's pretty hard sometimes, right? So they have to be able to hold their breath, just the same as muskrats. They have to be able to hold their breath for a really long time and dig up those roots because it can take a while. So they have this basically like a little oxygen tank that they can use to be able to stay underwater for a really long time, and they can hold their breath. And they can do this by shutting down some of their muscles when they're sitting there digging underwater, the ones that they don't use. And they also have these specialized little organelles in their cells. They have specialized cells that actually hold on to oxygen longer when they're underwater. And this is one of the only mammals that can do this. So their muscles are basically like pre-made little scuba tanks, right? They get oxygen when they need it. Yeah, and they can just go underwater for a long time. The second part that we're going to talk about is what we're all wearing right now, okay? So the water's pretty cold behind us, right? Pretty cold. And muskrats don't hibernate, so they go in the water regardless of the temperature of the water. And what do our coats do for us?
Keep us warm.
Keep us warm. And muskrat's fur basically does the same thing. So I'm going to pull this out right here. I want someone to tell me what this is.
Wetsuit.
A wetsuit. That's exactly what this is. So what does this wetsuit do for people?
Dry.
Keeps you dry and warm. Exactly. That's exactly what this does. So what muskrats are, is like they basically have this built into them. That's their superpower, is they basically have this little wetsuit built onto their bodies already. And this is what a muskrat fur looks like, and we'll talk about some of the components of the fur. So I'll pass this around and you can feel it. You want to take off your gloves and feel it?
Soft.
It's super soft, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you want to feel it? Nope. Yeah, super soft. You guys have seen this before? It's really soft. And you can imagine how this would make an excellent coat if you had this on, right? All the time. You want to feel? Thank you. So if we take a look at some of the layers of muskrat fur, you can see there's this really long, shiny outer coat. And that's oiled up, so that way water basically slicks off right away. And that oil and water don't mix, so no water can penetrate that.
Like ducks.
Yes, exactly like ducks. They put oil on their feathers. And so if you look even closer, you can see right here how there's this gray layer in there. So there's the really long layer, the brown layer, and then there's a gray layer. Okay? You can see how there's different layers to the fur. See how there's different layers in here? So that top layer, we talked about waterproofing. This brown layer is basically what gets wet. This brown layer right here that comes in contact with the water is what stays wet. And then that gray layer is what keeps them warm, just like our coats do. All right, so I need a volunteer next. Does someone want to volunteer? Preferably who has slip-on shoes. Yeah?
I have slip-on shoes.
Slip-on shoes? Do you think you can fit into these? No?
But I could fit into a mini one.
You could try and fit in the mini one. Sure. Let's try that. All right. What's your name? Eliana? Yeah? So do you want to try and... You can keep your boots on too. Do you want to see if you can try and fit in here? Maybe your mom or dad wants to help you out? Your grandma, grandpa? Yeah. All right. So Eliana's putting those on. It's okay if we can't slip them on at all. For a second. Yeah.
You wanted something for her to stand on, take her boots off and stand on?
I think maybe the bench.
Okay, so I have a mitt she can stand on.
I don't really want to hurt you.
All right. While Eliana's waiting for that, while we're waiting for her to put those on, this is important because this is taking a long time, and we'll talk about that in a second, right? So we talked about how a wetsuit keeps a person warm and dry. It's the same thing as a muskrat, right? And when a muskrat dives into the water and they're trying to evade their predators and things like that, it would be really easy. It's really easy for them just to jump right into the water and go right into the water, just exactly where they're standing, right? And this would be pretty hard. You can see how this is really hard to get on and off every single time. So can you imagine trying to put on a pair of waders or this wetsuit every time you wanted to get something to eat? Or imagine if we're gonna race in this for a second. Okay, we're gonna run just a little bit. And you can imagine how hard that would be all the time. So if muskrats have this superpower to basically jump into the water at any time, they have this pre-made little scuba suit where they can hold their breath for a really long time, and they have this oxygen tank, and then they also have this little scuba suit already built into them, so then they don't have to do this all the time. You don't have to put the arms in, that's all right. All right? You're so bad. There we go. Can you hold it? Perfect. All right. Can you come over here?
He'll hold it for you.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So we're gonna hold this.
These are fluffy.
Yeah, they are, and it's kind of uncomfortable, right? Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try. We're gonna walk as quick as we can down this way. All right. Okay. Ready?
Oh.
Wow, you are pretty quick. Yeah, you're a lot quicker than I thought, right?
Oh, child.
Okay.
Fear of nothing.
Even though you were really quick, this fit you a lot better than it would have fit me, right? Probably. Yeah, exactly. But if you were getting chased by something, do you think you could run as fast if you didn't have this coat on? Could you run faster if you had the coat on and the wetsuit on? You think you could run faster? Exactly. Basically, if it was just your skin, you'd be able to run much faster, right? Yeah, so that's what the superpower of our muskrat friends have. Yeah, you can go ahead. Yes! Thank you for cooperating. You can go ahead and take that off. Thank you. And just muskrats are able to have that superpower of being able to jump into the water, evade predators, have this pre-built little scuba suit on, so that way they don't get eaten, and they can forage for food underwater with those oxygen tanks. So we're going to do what we did last time, and on the count of 3, we're going to say super scuba, all right? Okay? We need more enthusiasm this time. Superpower, okay? Ready? So we're going to say super scuba on 3. 1, 2, 3. Super scuba! Okay, much better. Thank you. Thank you so much. I thought so too.
I let her take it.
All right, as we go to our next spot, we are gonna think about your favorite food, okay? Or maybe your favorite place to eat, all right? And we're gonna walk towards the boardwalks. So imagine this. You're in a restaurant waiting room right now. You have nice benches, a nice water feature in the background, very relaxing while you wait for your favorite food. Where is your favorite place to eat? Does anyone have a favorite place to eat?
Mostly my favorite food is Papa Murphy's.
Papa Murphy's. Pizza. So you like Papa Murphy's?
Yum.
And their favorite place to eat is at our kitchen table.
Oh yes, that's a good answer. That's a good, so sweet.
It's really nice.
All right, what about over here? Yeah.
In my kitchen.
In your kitchen too? Cool. And then what about favorite foods? Do people have some favorite foods over here?
potatoes.
Potatoes? Are you Irish? Jeepers.
Right here.
Anybody else with anyone else
Right
like to share?
here. Right here.
Matsuya and sushi.
Sushi?
I love sushi.
I love sushi. My favorite foods are, I could eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich like every day of the week. I love that. Or Buffalo Wild Wings. Those are really good. Buffalo wings are super good.
And sometimes I eat peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah.
Peter mostly likes it.
Yeah, I love to put some granola on there and it's the best. Yeah. So think of this as your favorite restaurant and you're at the gates of the restaurant waiting to go in, all right? That's basically what muskrats have right now. This is the gates to their favorite restaurants. Muskrats have this super awesome superpower of being able to eat 1/3 of their body weight every day, okay? So a muskrat is only like on average, like 3 pounds. So that's not very much. If you think about that, that's only a pound. So what is that? That's like 2 loaves of bread, or I don't know. It's very small, right? But if we were to compare that to me, that would be the equivalent of me eating 50 frozen pizzas in a sitting. Or one of my favorite drinks is almond milk. So that would be like me drinking 5 gallons of almond milk. I can't even carry 5 gallons of milk at a time, so I can't imagine what it would be like to fill me up with that much. Fill up my toes first before it goes to the rest of my body. So muskrats have this super awesome ability to eat 1/3 of their body weight every single day. If I ate 50 frozen pizzas, I would be full for a month. I would not be able to eat ever again, basically. All right, so this is a timer that's going off right now. Do you guys remember when we held our breath? It's been 17 minutes since we first held our breath. So that's how long our muskrat friends can hold their breath for. That's a really long time, isn't it? That's crazy. All right, so back to our food talk. Here's some of muskrat's favorite food right here. See what this is? Yeah? Does anyone remember what I said at the beginning what their favorite food was? Cattails, exactly. It's all behind us. That's why this is like the entrance to their buffet. Their favorite restaurant is right here. Muskrats also have a lot of other favorite foods too. Like this. Does anyone notice what this is? It does look similar to grass. It's usually harvested in the fall. Native Americans harvest a lot of it. It's rice. It's wild rice. Yeah, that's a really good guess. So they like to eat the roots and shoots of cattails and wild rice like this. They also like to eat a lot of the tubers. This is called a duck potato. So this is a really important food source for our super muskrat friends in the wintertime to gain their superpowers to survive the wintertime. So these duck potatoes are exactly what they sound like. They're these little tiny roots. They like grow in these little balls, and they grow under them. They grow in the mud of the swamp or the marsh or wherever they happen to grow. Muskrats aren't very picky. They also like to eat the tops of them too. They'll basically eat anything that's green. There's another one right here. This one's called Pickerel Weed. That first stop that I encourage you to go back to in the summertime is filled with pickerel weed like this. You can see how they have these really bright blue flowers and stuff on them. So these are like the Cheetos for muskrats. These things are really puffy and hollow, and they love snacking on these things all the time, right? You can see this and the flowers that they have on them. But like I said, muskrats aren't very picky. They'll kind of eat anything and everything. Okay? So why is this important? Why should we care if they can eat all of these plants, right? The superpower of our muskrats is they have this endless appetite. They can basically a bottomless pit, right? And if they can eat everything, that makes more room for other plants and other animals to be able to take up that space that they're eating in, or that they've eaten, right? So that's what makes it super important, is that muskrats can clear out areas and they'll stop the encroachment of other vegetation and just stop the marsh and the swamp from becoming this monoculture of just cattails, because cattails take over things really easily, and it provides opportunities for other plants to take up that space. And those flowers, like I showed earlier on this pickerel weed, this is really hard to grow sometimes. So if there's space for these flowers to grow, that's more places for pollination, more insects can come, and it just makes an ecosystem healthier when there's more plants and a different variety of plants to come through. So that leaves us with our third superpower. And again, on the count of 3, we're gonna say endless appetite. Okay, so that's our third superpower. Okay.
That's really hard.
Okay. Super energy. All right. These are for our super muskrat friends. Okay. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Endless appetite. Woo! All right. The boardwalk is very slippery, so please be careful as we move to our next spot. So now we're gonna get to the 4th superpower of our super muskrat friends. Okay. So does anyone know what succession is? This is a really big word. Do we know? What do you think succession means? So that's what success means. Okay. It does sound very similar. Good guess though. Okay. So I've been in school for 4 years and some people in my class still don't know what this means. So don't worry, it's okay if you don't know. Succession is really hard to understand and define. So what succession means is there's like this buildup of plants and mud and stuff like that. So it's going from one ecosystem to the next. And what muskrats do is they basically slow down the process of succession in the marsh. Marshes are one of the first areas to form after something, after disturbance has occurred, especially if it's wet, and it'll slowly dry out and turn into like a forest. It'll evolve into a forest essentially. And what muskrats do is they can eat so many plants. They can't eat everything though, but what they do is they slow the process of succession. And a perfect example of this is behind me. You can see this little open area, and this is an example of what the work of muskrats looks like, okay? When muskrats build their houses, they like to do it in very shallow areas, exactly like this. And what they do basically is they're super cleaners, all right? They take the bottom of the earth in the swamp, and they act like little shovels. And they dig at the bottom, and they scoop up, they go down, and they scoop up all of the mud, and they create open areas like this. Now, I'm gonna give you a hint. Can anyone guess what muskrats build their houses out of? Has anyone ever seen a muskrat house?
No.
No? What do you think they build them out of?
Well, we saw the muskrat hanging out in a bunch of rocks by the water.
A bunch of rocks? So there's 2 types of ways that muskrats can build their houses, okay? And remember how I was saying that muskrats aren't very picky eaters? Muskrats aren't really picky about what they build their houses out of either. So imagine if Pizza Hut built their restaurant out of pizza boxes, pizza, sauce, cheese, okay? So muskrats build their houses out of everyday things that they eat and that they use every single day. So what they'll do is they'll take this shovel and they'll dig up all of the muck on the bottom of a lake, and that also slows down succession, because if there's all of this buildup of mud and dead plants and things like that, this would eventually dry out, and it would look like where that tree is over there, where there's just dry ground, okay? And then, in the process of doing this, I got a really good picture of it. They dig those, this is what it looks like. You can see all of the buildup of the mud and the plant material, things like that. Once they have that base built up.
It looks like a beaver dam.
It does look like a beaver dam, kind of. Except these are made out of little pieces of cattail instead of sticks, right?
I've probably seen one of those before.
Exactly, you probably have. See these?
And I know what it is. Because I'm 5.
It'd be kind of cool to have a
And
house
so-
built out of food.
Exactly. So even in the wintertime, when their huts are frozen and it's too cold to go outside, they don't hibernate, like I said. So they'll just munch on the insides of their huts that are frozen, and they just get to eat. If your house is made out of your favorite food, of course I'm gonna take a bite out of it. It's like Candyland almost. And they live in these really shallow areas, And they provide, and when they clean up those areas, their superpower is cleaning. So when they clean up these areas, they provide safe habitats for other animals like ducks and geese. You can even see right here. These ducks are using it right now. The product of our superhero friends is for all of the other animals in the swamp to use, to be able to create a healthy, functioning, and dynamic ecosystem. You can see here, this is where a lot of birds like to nest on top of it. You see the goose right here? What sound does a goose make? That almost? Yeah, exactly. You can see that a lot of animals take advantage of a muskrat hut after they've cleaned up the area. So they like to clean things, they're just always eating, always cleaning up the bottom of the path to make their huts. Alright, and here's a better look. Here's a better look at what the muskrat hut looks like. Down here is where they bury, or is where they pile up a lot of those rocks and mud and stuff like that. And then once they've got all of those rocks and mud at the bottom of the base, they start piling that plant material on top of it. And because they always like to eat and eat and eat all the time, what they'll do is they'll start at the bottom and they'll chew their way up. And once they chew their way up, once they get above this water right here, you see that? This is what a muskrat hut looks like. Yeah. And they'll chew at the bottom. You see that right here? They'll chew at the bottom and they'll keep chewing into this little chamber up here.
Yeah.
This is called a dry chamber. And this is where they can stay warm and safe and out of the elements, and then nothing can find them. And then in the process, they're creating habitat for other animals like snails, and plants can grow on the side of them like this. And all sorts of things they can do. Cool.
Yes, it is.
And so you also talked about them maybe being around rocks and stuff. Another form of a muskrat hut looks like this. This is different. This is called a burrow. And what they'll do is they'll dig into the side of a bank, and they'll do the exact same thing. And they'll have one under the water, and then they'll usually have one that they conceal in the rocks. Exactly like behind you if you take a look. Sand is not a very good thing to build your house out of. It falls apart really easily. So they'll dig into the side of the rocks like this. You see? Dig up into here, and they'll try to create this dry chamber too. And this is where muskrats live if they don't have a lot of cattails. Yeah? Isn't that cool? Perfect. So muskrats clean all the time. They're able to clean spots out like this. They scoop up the bottom of the swamp. They slow succession. And they're able to clean out and make the swamp usable for other animals. Just like the ducks that we saw that flew away just a second ago, taking advantage of our superhero friends. So this one is, their superpower here is a super cleaner. So on the count of 3, we're gonna say super cleaner, all right? Okay? 1, 2, 3, super cleaner! Woo! All right. We're gonna move just a little bit further down.
Where's their den here?
So a lot of the times the muskrats here at Schmeeckle will burrow into the sides, or they are pretty shy, so there's always constant interruption. They like to be secretive about where they hide their burrows, and if they're getting disturbed all the time, they might not build their hut just right here, just right out in the open, because it is kind of like a pinpoint saying, "Listen, I live right here." Yeah. All right, so we're gonna walk down this way. It's just a short distance. Okay, so now we're gonna get to the final and 5th superpower of our superhero muskrat friends. And what I'm standing in front of right here is a little trail. You see that? Does everyone see how that? It might be hard to see. There's one behind you too that's filled with snow. You can see that line right there? Yeah. So this other superpower that our superheroes have is the ability to trailblaze. Does everyone know what that means? Is that hard? No? So what trailblazing is it makes you do something that's really hard so someone else doesn't have to. You put in the work before someone else. So amongst yourselves, we're going to generate some ideas of what maybe lives in the swamp, all right? Or lives in this marsh, okay? Get some ideas, things that might be flying around, all right? I'm going to grab a drink of water, and you can just shout them out, and I'll report them.
Dragonflies.
Dragonflies.
Mice.
Mice, that's a good one. We'll talk about that one. What about over here? Let's brainstorm ideas.
Deer?
Deer? That's a good one. Moles.
Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes, yeah.
Turtles.
Turtles.
Turtles, that's a really
Really
good
good.
one. Think about things that walk on land. What about those? Maybe things that get in your garbage. What about
Raccoon.
those animals? Ooh, raccoons, those live in the swamp.
Bear.
Bear. Yeah. What are some other things? You got a good list of them. Ants. Mink. Yeah, that's a good one.
Frogs.
Frogs. Perfect.
Like froggies.
So think about all of the things. Yeah. What do you have an idea?
Wolves and skunks.
Skunks. Perfect. Yes, exactly. And wolves. Everything uses a swamp at some point or another. All right. And we're gonna think about those smaller critters. All right. What about? Think about like a frog or a skunk maybe. Those are a little bit bigger. Or think about a turtle or a vole even. If you were only this big, this is pretty thick, isn't it? The stuff behind us, that'd be hard to walk through. Do you think even you could walk through this stuff? Might be pretty hard, right? Probably could try, but it'd be super hard. And think about a turtle. A turtle's only this big, okay? Right? Turtle is tiny, and their legs are really little. Same with a raccoon. They're pretty big, but when they walk, they're really close to the ground too, and they're gonna have to push through all of these reeds, push through all of these grasses.
Like my dog.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So even though dogs have really long, even though dogs have really long legs, it might be easier to follow a trail, right? And so what muskrats do, they have this superpower of trailblazing. So when they're trying to build their houses, they're gonna build it out of the same material that they live in. And they're not gonna work very hard to do that. They're not gonna want to put in time and energy. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna take a bite and take a clump, and then they're gonna walk back the same way that they came. And they're just gonna keep building this trail while they do that, right? And what that does is it creates these trails like this. And if you look really hard on here, you may see some deer trails. You might see some skunk prints, things like that. And that's because all animals use these trails that muskrats first created. They're the ones that are easily able to eat this material. This is their favorite food after all, right? Well, be careful. This is their favorite food after all. And they're the ones who are putting in the work first so that all of these other animals in this ecosystem can take advantage of that, right? How cool is that? That they're starting this, they're cleaning everything, they're making sure that new animals and plants can use an area. So they're pretty awesome. They have these awesome superpowers. Okay, before we conclude, we're gonna talk about the 5 superpowers that our muskrat friends have. These should be easy to remember because we did shout them, all right? You remember? That's why we needed enthusiasm, all right? So what was the first one that we had?
Invisibility.
Invisibility. Right, okay? And so what invisibility does for our muskrat friends is they have this superpower to basically stay alive, to evade predators, and to be able to keep our ecosystem functioning and happy and healthy. They need to be alive to be able to do that. Our second one, what was that?
Scuba.
Scuba suit. Super scuba. That's what they were, right? And so this helps our super muskrat friends being able to have that ability to stay underwater for a really long time, to gather all of the food that they need to be able to keep an ecosystem functioning and happy and healthy, right? They have that oxygen tank to stay underwater for a long time, and the scuba suit is their fur to stay warm, since they don't hibernate, to keep our ecosystem afloat. All right, the third one, remember that?
Endless appetite.
Endless appetite, yes, they're like bottomless pits. If we didn't have muskrats, the swamp would just be overgrown with cattails. There would be nothing but cattails here, so they provide an opportunity for other plants to take hold. Do you remember the flowers that I showed you? So it's not just animals and other ducks that are benefiting from that. Most of the time people don't think of insects as animals and being able to help and provide for the health of an ecosystem in the community. Fourth one. Remember that one? That one had to deal with the shovel.
Super cleaner.
Oh yeah,
They're
super
a
cleaner.
super cleaner, right. So you can think of this, I think of this like when I was a little kid, I just like wet things underneath of my bed, basically. If I was a muskrat, there would just be a pile of dirty laundry and a bed on top of it. That's what it would look like. All right? So these muskrats are cleaning all the time. Other animals don't have that ability. Skunks don't have that ability. Raccoons don't have that ability. Deer don't have that ability to slow down succession in a marsh setting. So they're the ones really spearheading that project there, really taking the lead on always cleaning and making sure that animals have the space to be able to do that. All right, and our last one was here, fifth and final superpower. Trailblazing, exactly. So they're making these roads and connecting all of the different parts of the swamp, just like behind me. So those little animals like frogs and things like that, they'll even use these. Even their beaver friends, the ones that take all of the credit for what they're doing. Beavers don't do that. They'll follow the trail of a muskrat. So they are super helpful ecosystem engineers. And our muskrat friends tell us that just because you aren't always seen and you aren't always recognized, that doesn't mean that you aren't super valuable to the health of an ecosystem, and that you still have superpowers even if everyone doesn't get to see you very often. All right? So with that, I would like to conclude our program. Thank you for coming. I do have the original Ojibwa creation story for you all to read. I hope that it inspires you the same way that it inspires me. I'm going to stick around if you have any questions, and if you don't know where we are, you can also stick around and we can walk back to the cars together. All right? So, yeah, I'll go ahead and, before you leave, come and grab a story and then we can head out. Perfect. Thank you. Here you go.
Hey, kids! There's a muskrat here! Hey, kids, just stand there. There's an animal coming in the water.
Yeah, he might go under the bridge.
Hey, kids, look over there. There's a muskrat water over there.
Yeah, he's gonna go under the bridge.
Coming down towards you. See him swimming?
Oh, now he's coming back.
Oh, here he is. He's right here. Coming back. I don't know what that is.
See, look. See him out there? Look at in the water.
You didn't want to go over the water.
See the ripples?
See him swimming in the water?
Point of the ripples.
Oh, he's right here.
Right over here.
What are the chances of this? This is incredible.
Could be yellow.
You see him? Yeah, you see him, Joseph? He's right there.
There he goes.
Right down here, girls. Come down here.
You wanna... Now he's coming back.
He's afraid of those kids.
That brown thing in the water moving?
Where'd he go now? Went underneath.
Oh, he's right here. He doesn't know where to go with all these people.
Invisibility!
Yeah, I'm supposed to be invisible.
Wow.